This is James Mathers for the Digital Cinema Society at Cine Gear Expo 2023. I'm here with Chase Hagen. He works for ARRI in the U.S. and handles cameras. Chase, ARRI has been the go-to camera for major motion pictures and television for quite a while, but it keeps evolving. Tell us a little bit about the Alexa and the evolution of it.
Yeah, absolutely. When we started with Alexa in 2010, we wanted to bring to the world a Super 35 digital camera that could exceed or at least meet motion picture film in terms of image quality. And so came out with the original Alexa in 2010, and that evolved. We had different models all the way up to the Alexa Studio, where you could actually have an optical viewfinder in the camera, which was fantastic. And then we evolved to the Alexa XT in 2013, where we brought ARRI recording built into the camera, so you didn't need an external recorder to get that high quality uncompressed ARRI. And then we started getting these requests, and we started kind of looking at the world of larger formats, from moving from the Super 35 Alexa, of course. Now, the one thing that we always did with Alexa is we had a tall sensor for 4:3 recording, which was really great for anamorphic shooting. A lot of other digital cameras at the time were only using 16:9 sensors. So with anamorphic, it was tricky. There was crop factor. It just wasn't nice. So we really tackled anamorphic early on the Alexa line. Then we thought, well, there's these requests for a larger format. And in late 14, I believe it was December 2014, we unveiled the Alexa 65, was the world's first digital motion picture camera with a 65 millimeter equivalent in terms of imaging plane. And obviously that was specific to ARRI rental, in a sense that that was a camera that we didn't sell, that you could get through ARRI rental exclusively. And then that was so successful. I mean, at first we thought we only needed to build a few cameras for the team at rental, and then they needed more and more in terms of movies using them. A Marvel movie would book a bunch of cameras for a long period of time, doing multiple films back to back. So they had to build more and more Alexa 65.
So the Alexa 65, that's a huge sensor. That's actually two sensors side by side?
It's actually three Alexa sensors.
Three
turned on their side vertically and printed on one piece of silicon. So it's the equivalent size if you were to take three of those Super 35 regular Alexa sensors and then put them basically the tall way or vertically, and then print it on one piece of silicon. And then you have essentially an aspect ratio of 2.11 to 1. So it's kind of a wide format as well.
So once you breached that large sensor, then where did you go next?
Yeah. So then after that, the success was really incredible, because we didn't think we had to make too many cameras. We didn't think it would be used for everything from a commercial to a music video. We thought, well, this is a specialty camera. It'll be used for specific shots, maybe just visual effects when you really want that larger format, but everyone wanted to use it all the time. So we knew it was popular. And because of that, we came out with the Alexa LF a few years later in 2018, which is a little bit closer to the standard full-size Alexa in terms of size and weight. It had the built-in wireless video, which was great, the lens control, of course, but it had a large format sensor, which was two Alexa sensors in size, turned vertically and printed on one piece of silicon. So it was, again, twice as big, basically, as the Super 35 sensor in the Alexa. It was 4.5K, which was great for if you had a demand in terms of a deliverable that needed to be natively UHD or higher, for example. And it was it's still a very tall sensor, so a 1:5 aspect ratio. The kind of evolution became like, well, that's close enough to full frame. It's 44.7 millimeters across, and if you have a full frame lens, you can cover that sensor.
And how does anamorphic work with that?
That's a good question. Anamorphic large format lenses are still kind of hard and few to find. I mean, spherical lenses are very plentiful for full frame or large format, but anamorphic is still really tricky because you have to make that image circle so much bigger. Obviously, you could crop the sensor down to whatever it covers, in terms of lensing. So our master anamorphics have quite a bit of over projection, and they can cover a little bit beyond a 4:3 Super 35 negative, but they can't even cover a full height of a large format sensor, not through the entire range. When you get to some of the longer ones, like the 40 or 50, you can maybe use the entire height of the Alexa LF sensor, but that's something where we're still trying to figure out, like, is there, large format's already so much shallower, then you go to anamorphic large format, and I mean, I would,
wouldn't want to be a camera assistant.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it would be, all the tools in the world won't be able to help you there in terms of just, not getting rehearsals. Let's go again.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. Definitely.
So then now we have the Alexa 35.
We have the Alexa 35. Yeah, we took the obviously the idea that we would always have multiple formats, right? So we have Super 35 living in coexistence with large format, living in coexistence with even 65 millimeter format, and we always wanted to evolve in the Super 35 realm, but we always said we won't compromise image quality just to have a 4K sensor, right? We heard many times, I need to have 4K for this reason or that reason, and some of them were demands for delivery. deliverables, but we didn't want to compromise on image quality and say, well, here's a 4K sensor, but it's actually worse than our old sensor kind of thing. So we worked really hard for many years developing not only a new sensor for the camera, but also entirely new camera platform, because the idea was that we could meld the two different camera platforms, the Alexa Mini line and the full-size Alexa, into one, because these days people would like a small camera and they would like it to do a lot. Gone are the days where, I could have 3 different kinds of cameras and this one's good for that one's good for that. There's still some specialty, of course, but the idea that we could try to build in all of the features that you love on a big Alexa, and then also the size and weight closer to an Alexa Mini, is how the 35 evolved. So it's really not much bigger than an Alexa Mini or Alexa Mini LF. It's a lot smaller than a full-size Alexa, and it's incredibly powerful in terms of its horsepower, its monitor outputs, the new color science. In addition to powering that new sensor, we've got now the ability to have 4.6K in the open gate mode. We've got 4K in the exact Super 35 area. So if you have a lens that covers exactly Super 35, maybe a zoom or a vintage lens, you can still get your 4K up to 120 frames per second in uncompressed ARRI RAW. Or if you want to use the whole sensor because you want a little bit of a bigger format, you've gotten used to maybe a large format from an Alexa LF or Mini LF, you could use the 4.6K and get the entire sensor if your lenses cover it.
So for anamorphic, that might be the great choice, right? Just open gate with the
you could do open gate.
Alexa 35.
Exactly. You can do open gate. We have a mode that's like kind of what we call the get everything anamorphic. So it's a slightly smaller area that's 6x5. This was really something too that we worked on, because with the original Alexa, we always had 4x3, but when you de-squeeze 4x3, you get 266, because 1.33 times 2 is 2.66. And then you have to chop the sides off to get down to 2.39. And that's how you did it in film, but it's a bit more of a cumbersome workflow. And maybe you're working with a post-production or editorial team that is not familiar with anamorphic. So now with the Alexa 35, we have a 6x5 sensor mode, because even though 6x5 sounds weird, it's really 1.195, which 1.195 times 2 is 2.39.
Oh, don't make my head hurt.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. But anamorphic is great. If you're just traditional anamorphic shooter that you want to use your vintage or even more modern anamorphics in Super 35, you can just use an Alexa 35 as you would anamorphic like on a Mini, for example, but you have that higher resolution, the new sensor with 17 stops of dynamic range. You've got the new reveal color science. You've got now better sensitivity overall, including the ES mode. Do you know about the ES mode on the Alexa 35?
No, I don't.
The ES mode is incredible. I absolutely love it. And so what some of our competitors have done is they've said, okay, well, we'll have 2 base sensitivities. You got to shoot one or the other, and anything in between sometimes gets a little bit muddy, and the higher value usually loses dynamic range. That's something that a lot of people don't realize when you switch to those dual native. So what we do is different, because we read every photo site on the sensor twice at the same time, the high and low gain dual gain architecture. We can't do that, first of all, but second of all, that also allows us to capture that entire dynamic range of 17s by combining it. Exactly. So what we did is with the ES mode is the Alexa 35 is very powerful. The sensor is very fast. And so what we decided to do with the ES mode is we actually take what we call kind of a live noise map subtraction between frames. So think of it this way. Digital camera doesn't have a shutter, but it exposes, your image at 24 frames, open 1/48th of a second, closed is aka the sensor is off. It's a black blanking frame. Then it opens again. And in this case, the sensor turns on and reads itself. And so that's your 24 frames motion cadence. Well, what happens instead of just having that black blanking frame in between? Why don't we use that fill it in with just the noise, not the image of the black frame in between, but just the noise map of the noise in between images. So it's the sensor noise between images. So we use just the noise map of that to actually reduce the noise of the next latent frame. So you essentially are just using it as like kind of live real-time noise reduction, but with no penalty whatsoever.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. So, it's great that ARRI doesn't rush things. They never will introduce a product until it's been thoroughly tested. And not all companies do that.
No.
Also, another advantage of that is that they give the buyer a chance to amortize their equipment.
Definitely.
ARRI doesn't sell a camera and then 6 months later sell something that is going to make the other one obsolete before you can get a chance to amortize it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, ARRI, for that.
Yeah.
What about your latest products?
Yeah, so we have at the booth today, we have a couple of them, but one on an Alexa 35, one on a mini LF of the new CCM1 control monitor. So it stands for Camera Control Monitor 1. And for many years, we had a lot of customers saying, we love your viewfinder, it's great. The little flip out screen with the easy to use menu is great, but we're not so much of an eyepiece person, and I have to keep that, viewfinder on there to get to the menu control, especially on the mini LF where it doesn't have the side display like the Alexa 35. And even then, that side display can't get you to the whole menu, but people wanted to have just a monitor that could do all that because they have a monitor that they end up mounting on a camera, but it's just a dumb monitor. So we thought, well, let's build the two together to have a monitor that's very high quality. So the new CCM1 is 1300 nits, actually measured by ARRI 1300 nits, not just somebody claiming it. And then it's also color science matched to the MVF. So it looks as you would expect from the actual eyepiece in terms of its color rendition. It's a great monitor. And then what we also decided to do is add camera control in there. So it has a 1-for-1 GUI of the ARRI touchscreen. Exactly. So it has your normal ARRI simple menus. You can get the normal 6 menu of your ND filter, your ISO, your white balance, your shutter, all that good stuff. Or you can go into the full menu too. You can literally access the menu as if you're using the flip out screen on the MVF.
That's great. I hate viewfinders. Having to be stuck there. I want to be back a little and
perfect.
And that's HDR.
It's not full HDR. The ARRI standard. Yeah. It's close. Exactly.
Yeah, not to the ARRI standard.
Yes, not to the ARRI standard. We the 1300 nits is HDR, but the contrast ratio isn't there. So by ARRI reasoning, it's not full HDR.
That's great that you don't claim it.
No, yeah, it's not. That's the thing with us. We really want to make sure if we're going to claim it, it's got to be up to our standard. In this case, it's a very nice, bright, good monitor that almost gets you to HDR, but not quite. But the camera control is big. It does have SDI. So if you run into the case of, I just want a nice monitor on my non-ARRI camera, you could even use it as just an SDI monitor. It has an in and out loop through. In addition, so you can use it on a non-ARRI camera. A really cool sun hood that's really fantastic that origami folds, kind of feels like an iPad Pro case when you play with it. Just super simple. A new mounting arm. The idea with the mounting arm was really great. It's not really an arm. It's more of a bracket, I should say. It's called the Mac 1. Multi-adapter 1. And the idea is with the Mac 1 that you can loosen 2 knobs and move the monitor with one hand. So with one hand, instead of having to hold the monitor if you're using a no arm, for example, you have to hold the monitor and the arm and adjust it together. Otherwise, the monitor will fall off. With the Mac 1, you just loosen 2 knobs. And then with the one monitor, with one hand, you can move the monitor to where you need it to be and then tighten it down. So it's a lot more adjustable with one-handed use. So typical ARRI fashion, we've got some cool accessories for mounting to go with it.
So you're my ARRI sales rep in Burbank, and can you tell me about delivery of these new items? And how about the Alexa 35? Is that
sure? So for the CCM1, the new Camera Control Monitor 1, we started to take orders about a week ago when we announced it officially, and then that will start to deliver in July, so not too long from now. In terms of Alexa 35, if it was an Alexa 35 order just by itself, just for the camera, we are still looking at a pretty heavy back order. We're making them as fast as we can, but obviously
very popular,
lots of orders. Obviously, still hard to get parts that we need to make it. So delivery time would be toward the end of Q1 of 24 if you were to order now. So, not terrible, less than a year, but, still a little bit of time. One thing that we do have our colleagues in Germany, they've said, well, we can put aside a certain number of Alexa 35 cameras and Alexa Mini LF cameras as well that can be bundled with 5 signature primes or 8 signature primes. And in the case of the Alexa 35, that would get you a more priority delivery. So you could get your camera this year if you said, hey, I want to invest in some lenses. So we've earmarked basically some of the cameras we're making to be part of what we call a signature lens bundle. So you can do 5 primes or 8 primes, or you can do 2 signature zooms, 3 signature zooms, or 4 signature zooms. And with that bundling, we also have a bit of a discount. So a pricing incentive, you're not paying full price for all the lenses in those cases.
Good deal.
Yeah, good deal.
Thanks so much, Jace.
Hey, you're very welcome, James. All right, cool.